My parents evict me after I paid their mortgage for 5 years. While my brother inherits the home, witness how I confront betrayal and rebuild my life. I tapped submit payment and my heart skipped like a faulty metronome. My name is Marina Delgado, I'm 28, and I've lived my entire adult life in Columbus, Ohio. I work 80 hours a week, 40 at a mid-sized accounting firm downtown, 20 splitting tables at the corner cafe, and 20 more folding shirts at a department store on weekends. Every extra dollar I earned went straight into my parents' mortgage account, a silent promise I made 5 years ago when Dad's company downsized and health bills started stacking up. My mother's kitchen smelled like reheated lasagna and stale coffee as I set my laptop on the chipped formica. She hovered over my shoulder, eyebrows knitted with barely contained excitement. My father stood by the window, staring out at the gray spring sky like he was afraid to believe this moment was real. I watched my fingers hover over the trackpad, imagined the mortgage balance ticking down to zero, and felt the weight of every skipped weekend getaway and declined promotion settle in my chest. Ready? Mom asked, voice trembling. I pressed the button. A confirmation popped up. Mortgage paid in full. My breath hitched. 5 years of unpaid overtime, 2 degrees piled on student loans, and more nights of exhaustion than I could count. All distilled into this moment. Dad's eyes glistened. Mom's lips trembled. They looked at me as if I'd moved mountains with my bare hands. My phone buzzed. Another notification from my savings app reminding me that my own dream home fund was empty. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a grin, hoping my face didn't betray the ache behind my ribs. "It's done," I said, voice steadier than I felt. Mom reached across the table, her hand inching toward mine before she thought better of it. "Thank you, sweetheart. We couldn't have done this without you." Dad cleared his throat, shifting from one foot to the other like he wasn't used to standing still. "Yeah, Marina, you did good." Their words should have felt like sunshine after a long winter, but instead they echoed hollowly around me. I'd watched them cry tears of relief countless times over small victories, passing a test, getting a promotion. But this was different. I yearned for more than tears. I craved an embrace, a genuine "I'm proud of you," something to prove I wasn't just the invisible lifeline holding them up. I closed my laptop, the soft click of the lid sounding louder than I expected. My mother's eyes flicked to the screen, then away, and Dad busied himself with clearing dishes. Silence thickened the air between us, a tension I couldn't name. I wanted to ask if they'd ever noticed my own dreams gathering dust in the corner, but the words stuck to the roof of my mouth. Instead, I stood, smoothing the front of my shirt. "I have to get back to work," I lied, grabbing my keys. My stomach twisted as I crossed the room. I should have celebrated, but the relief I'd imagined never came. All I felt was a cold knot in my chest, as if I'd just crossed a finish line into an empty stadium. I slipped out the back door and into the fading afternoon light. My reflection in the glass porch panel looked as worn as the sneakers on my feet. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the sidewalk, feeling the world tilt beneath me. What they didn't know was that this payment was only the beginning of what I had to face next. I unlocked the door, and my keys trembled in my hand. The living room was quiet except for the hum of the overhead light. Too bright, too clinical. I dropped my tote bag by the couch and called out, "Mom, Dad, before I saw them, clustered around the dining table with Lucas perched on the edge of his chair, like he'd been summoned for judgment. My mother slid something across the polished wood, a crisp envelope, weighty, formal-looking. I frowned, knelt, and peeled it open. Inside was the house deed, the same brick address I'd grown up in, now printed in bold letters atop a transfer to Lucas Delgado. "Marina," she said, voice soft as moth wings. We thought it best." Her eyes flicked to my father, who leaned back in his seat, arms folded. Lucas swallowed, cheeks flushing. "Best?" I echoed without thinking, clutching the paper until my knuckles whitened. "You're transferring the house to him." My voice cracked, disbelief twisting my words. My father's jaw tightened. "You've been too independent, Marina. Always insisting on doing everything yourself. It's time you learned what adulthood really means." He sounded proud, as if he'd uncovered some great parental truth. My heart slammed against my ribs. "I paid every cent," I whispered, feeling the world spin. Where does that leave me? My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. You're an adult now. You need your own place. Lucas will handle the house. She turned back to the table as though our conversation had ended. I stared at the deed, the ink smudged under my tear-shadowed eyes. My hands trembled. It was as if I'd been building my life on shifting sand, only to watch it crumble beneath me. Every sacrifice, every skipped vacation, every late-night shift, it all meant nothing to them. Lucas met my gaze, his mouth opening and closing like a startled fish. Marina, don't, I said, voice hollow. Just don't. My knees buckled and I sank into the nearest chair, clutching the deed to my chest. The paper rustled like a cruel laugh in the silent room. I didn't hear Mom or Dad moving behind me. Didn't see them exchanging that familiar, pious glance, as though I were the problem they'd been waiting to fix. My world tilted. The house where I'd hoped to retire, where I'd imagined raising my own family someday, was already theirs, without so much as a thank you. My mind raced, memories flashing, the night I stayed late to cover Dad's double shift, the mornings I dragged myself to class after working until midnight, the countless times I'd given up my dreams so they could keep theirs. Each memory felt poisoned now, a betrayal sealed in ink on that deed. I pushed away from the table, the seat scraping the floor. My vision blurred with hot tears I refused to wipe. I'll pack, I said, voice flat. My father barely looked up. Take your time. I fled down the hallway, the deed crumpled in my fist and slammed my bedroom door behind me. My childhood. Posters stared down at me as I collapsed onto the bed, chest heaving, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Outside the walls I'd known all my life, my future lay uncertain and cold. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd ever find a place that felt like home again. What do you do when the foundation you built your life on crumbles without warning? Morning hit me like a freight train. I woke to an empty house. The silence, louder than any argument. I sat up on the edge of my bed, heart still thudding, and stared at the crumpled deed on my nightstand. Every other memory from last night blurred, but that paper lay stark between us. My sacrifice given away. I found them in the kitchen. My mother poured coffee without looking up. Dad thumbed through the morning paper like nothing had changed. I balled my fists at my sides. What's business exactly? I asked, voice low. You keep saying it's business. Explain it. Mom's shoulders tensed. She sighed, setting mugs on the counter. It's just how things work, Marina. Lucas has a steady job. Benefits, sick leave, the whole package. You've always jumped from one thing to the next. She turned to Dad, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. You know, Dad folded the paper, eyes cold. She's overreacting. We thought it best to simplify matters. You've been needy. His words struck me like ice water. Needy? My hands shook so badly the mug rattled on the counter. I kept this house afloat for 5 years. Every late night, every extra shift. It wasn't charity. It was a promise. My chest tightened as I remembered nights spent hunched over spreadsheets, mornings arriving before sunrise, weekends when I closed down the cafe alone. Mom shook her head, lips pressed thin. You're twisting it. Lucas just stepped up. He's always been more capable of handling responsibility. A flash of memory hit me, a conversation I'd overheard last month. Lucas on the phone, Mom coaching him to mention his savings and stable schedule. I'd laughed at his pride when he bragged about finally helping Mom and Dad financially. They'd set him up. My heart tightened into a fist. I heard you, I said, voice quiet but fierce. Lucas, you told me yourself. His eyes widened. He looked guilty, shuffling his feet. You told me you only started offering extra money after she asked you to? I turned back to my mother. So, that was your plan all along? She crossed her arms. Don't put words in my mouth. You're making this up, I pressed on, every syllable sharp. You never once asked how I was doing, never thanked me, just pushed me aside the moment you could replace me. Heat flamed behind my eyes as the memories spilled in. Dad's anxious phone call about medical bills in 20, my jury duty excuse so I could cover his shift, Mom's tears when I postponed my graduation trip. Dad's voice trembled, a flicker of doubt in his gaze. Marina, you took it too far. You built your life around us. Exactly, I snapped. I sacrificed me for you. And when I finish, you hand me an eviction notice. They said nothing. Lucas looked at his shoes. The silence stretched. Brutal and accusing. I realized then how little I'd been valued. Not for who I was, but for what I provided. I backed away, chest heaving. I'm done. My door slammed behind me before either of them could respond. Alone in the room that held every teenage nightmare and childhood triumph, the betrayal sank in like poison. All those years I'd believed in family meant more than biology. Now I saw the cracks in their foundation, deep and jagged. My reflection in the mirror looked foreign. Eyes red, shoulders squared. Rage simmered beneath my calm exterior. I would no longer be their invisible lifeline. How do you rebuild when the people you trusted become the architects of your downfall? Found them in the living room. Dad reclined in his favorite armchair, Mom perched on the sofa's edge, and Lucas slouched beside her. The late afternoon sun filtered through lace curtains, painting the room in a false warmth. I stood in the doorway, palms damp, voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk. They looked at me as if I were disturbing a quiet prayer. I held up a crisp sheet of paper, my meticulously maintained list of every mortgage transfer. Dates, amounts, account references. Their eyes flicked from the document to my face, mouths tightening. You were never grateful, I began, voice steadier than I felt. You never acknowledged the nights I spent crunching numbers for you, or the weekends I traded sleep for shifts. I logged 5 years of unpaid overtime so you could keep this house. And what did I ask in return? A simple, thank you. Mom's eyes narrowed. You kept score? I swallowed the hurt blooming in my throat. I kept records because it mattered. I sacrificed promotions, vacations, my own goals, so you'd have a roof over your heads. You treated it like charity. Dad's fingers drummed against the armrest. You always thought you were owed something. Because I was, I interrupted, pain sharpening my tone. You owed me honesty. You owed me respect. Instead, you fed me half-truths about family business while grooming Lucas to take my place. I held their gaze. How long did you plan this? When did I become replaceable? Lucas shifted, guilt flickering across his face. Marina, Don't, I said, voice cold. You were complicit. You knew what was happening and you let it happen. My chest ached, fury and sorrow interwoven. I come here asking why, and you tell me I'm ungrateful, entitled. You reverse 5 years of work, and for what? Because I cherished my freedom too much? Mom's lips quivered. She looked from me to Dad, tears brimming. We thought we were doing right by everyone. By everyone? I echoed. Not by me. The room felt smaller, walls closing in as memories flooded. Mom's proud smile when I graduated debt-free. Dad's tearful hug after my first big bonus. Lucas's empty congrats texts. All gestures had been staged. Hollow, my voice cracked. I needed you to see me, not as a wallet, but as your daughter. I laid the list on the coffee table. Here's every cent I gave. Every late night, every dream postponed. Look at it. A ledger of my life. They stared at the numbers, faces drained of color. My father's knuckles whitened on the armrests. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a trembling hand. Lucas looked away, unable to meet my gaze. Silence stretched, oppressive as storm clouds. No apologies came, no explanations. Only the creak of the sofa springs and the distant hum of traffic beyond the walls. I felt a hollow ache settle in my chest. I'd come seeking answers, maybe even reconciliation. Instead, I found only walls reinforced by blame and denial. My parents and brother clung to their version of loyalty, unwilling to admit their betrayal. I took a step back, every muscle screaming to run. I'm leaving, I said quietly. My voice trembled, but the resolve beneath it was iron. I can't. Stay where I'm not wanted. Mom's tearful lips parted, but no words came. Dad's hand tightened into a fist. Lucas looked pale, silent. I turned, each footfall on the wooden floorboards echoing like a drumbeat of finality. My heart pounded, equal parts grief and liberation. The front door swung shut behind me, leaving their stunned silence to settle. Like dust in the empty living room. Outside, the evening air was cool, a stark contrast to the tension I'd left behind. My breath came in deep, shuddering pulls. The world beyond their door felt both terrifying and exhilarating. What do you do when the people who built your house refuse to let you live in it? I woke to the sting of fluorescent bulbs and the bitter tang of stale motel coffee pressing at my temples. My bag lay half unzipped on the threadbare carpet, clothes spilling like discarded hopes. I counted the hours since I'd slammed that door behind me. 4 small digs from noon until the motel's 2 a.m. lights out, each flicker a reminder of how far I'd fallen. Empty walls closed in around me as my phone buzzed, Emma's name glowing on the screen. "Marina, where are you?" she asked, concern threading her voice. I forced a laugh I didn't feel. "A motel," I admitted, heart thudding. She paused, then gently unraveled my defenses. "You've always been the fixer, but who fixes you?" Her question floated between us, raw and unexpected. I pressed my forehead to the cool wall and heard the echo of those words. Who fixes me? Memories crashed in. My 23-year-old self, eyes bright, clutching a plane ticket to Spain I never used. The brush stubs and half-finished canvas in my closet, gathering dust like old regrets. The promissory note I drafted in my head every time I gave up something for them. Each flashback was a mirror to a younger woman who dared to dream, now buried beneath ledgers and late-night shifts. I realized then how I'd erased myself from every equation but theirs, my identity sacrificed at the altar of their comfort. Dawn crept in through the threadbare curtains, casting pale stripes across the stained duvet. I stared at my reflection, in the cracked mirror, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped, and yet something flickered, a spark of defiance I hadn't felt in years. I sat up and ran a trembling hand through my hair. "No more," I whispered to the woman in the glass. It wasn't a plea or a question. It was a vow. I reached for my notebook and scrawled 3 words at the top of a blank page. Own my life. The pen felt heavy in my hand, each letter a small revolution. I thought of Emma's unwavering faith, her gentle reminders that self-care wasn't selfish. For the first time since I'd transferred my last shift to them, I felt a sliver of something stronger than despair, determination. I pocketed the notebook, laced up my sneakers, and stepped out into the morning light. The parking lot was silent except for the distant hum of traffic. I drew in a shaky breath and pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of my own heartbeat. It wasn't theirs to guide anymore. It was mine. Tomorrow, I would face the world on my own terms, and nothing would ever be the same. I turned the key in the lock and stepped into the house that had been mine by right of blood and sacrifice. The air smelled faintly of laundry detergent and wilted flowers, traces of a home that once felt safe. In my arms, I carried a single cardboard box, a few photographs of Mom's laugh lines, Dad's old wristwatch, and the worn canvas bag that held my most essential clothes. Every other possession I owned was gone, sold, donated, or given away to lighten my burden and theirs. Mom emerged from the hallway, her face pale behind tired eyes. "Marina?" she managed, voice hesitant as a child's first step. Dad stood. Behind her, arms crossed, posture rigid. Lucas lingered in the background, guilt still clinging to his shoulders. I set the box on the dining table and met their gazes. No tears, no tremble in my voice. Only a calm I'd never known I possessed. "I sold everything I didn't need," I said, pulling a stack of papers from my tote. My car, most of my furniture, even the camera I bought before college. I laid a spreadsheet across the table. Every payment I'd made toward the mortgage, every dollar of interest saved, each late-night shift converted to ink and sell. The numbers stretched back 5 years. Lines of dedication turned into evidence. Dad's jaw clenched. Mom's lips quivered as she looked down. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "You benefited from all this," I continued, tracing a line with my finger. "You lived here rent-free, debt-free because of me." I closed the spreadsheet with a measured slap. Now it's time I live for myself. Silence swelled, heavy as storm clouds. My parents exchanged that same pious glance that once made me feel dutiful, then small. But their indignation faltered under the weight of my quiet resolve. They opened their mouths to speak, then sought the right words like lost travelers. None came. I slid a house key toward them. "This stays," I said, voice steady. "The deed is in Lucas's name now. You keep it." My gaze hardened when Lucas reached a hand forward as if pleading. "Don't," I said softly. "You can't fix this." His shoulders sagged. My mother's voice broke finally. "Marina, I'm sorry." The single phrase trembled between us. Too little. Too late. My chest tightened, but I refused to soften. I deserve more than words. I deserve autonomy. I bent to lift the cardboard box, dust motes dancing in the late afternoon light. Dad's throat bobbed as if he had something to say, but swallowed it. I turned toward the door, each step deliberate. Mom's heels clicked on the hardwood behind me, but she didn't reach out. Lucas stood frozen, and Dad retreated further, into the shadows of the hallway. I paused at the threshold, the sun outside brighter than any welcome. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, a breath I claimed for myself. "Goodbye," I said, not looking back. The screen door closed with a soft click that echoed like a final verdict. I stepped onto the street, the box cradled at my side, and felt a thrill of freedom laced with sorrow. The sidewalk stretched ahead, uncharted and vast. For the first time, I would build a home where I was truly seen and loved on my own terms. Neighbors' stares cut sharper than any blade as I unlocked my mailbox and retrieved the stack of flyers and bills, none addressed to me, but each one carrying heavy whispers. I paused on the sidewalk outside my modest apartment building, pressing a flyer for a bake sale to my chest. Behind me, through the window of my parents' old house, I saw Aunt Lorraine leaning across the fence, voice low, pointing toward my deserted doorstep. I didn't need to hear the words to know. They were talking about me. That evening, Emma called, urgency in her voice. "Marina, your mom showed up at Lucas's room, crying, begging him to bring you back." My breath caught. "He refused," Emma continued. "He told her you don't need rescuing." I closed my eyes and imagined them. Mom, face streaked with tears, reaching for the brother who'd taken my place. And Lucas, shaking his head, guilt splintering his features, but standing firm for once. I wandered through my living room, lit by the soft glow of a single lamp. On the wall hung a framed photo of me and Lucas from Christmas 3 years ago, our smiles forced but genuine, back when family felt like belonging. I traced the frame's edge with a fingertip, remembering Mom's laugh that afternoon. Now, it sounded hollow in my mind. That night, restless, I dreamed of my father alone in that empty house. In the dream, he sat at the kitchen table under a solitary bulb, a pile of bank statements spread before him like evidence of betrayal. His hands shook as he flipped through pages, eyes red, lips pressed into a thin line. I woke in a cold sweat, heart pounding with the echo of his unspoken regret. At dawn, I walked the quiet streets of my new neighborhood, sunlight dancing on budding leaves. My phone buzzed, a silent notification. My parents' home was listed for sale, price reduced. Their pride, it seemed, couldn't withstand the weight of their guilt. I felt a pang of something I couldn't name. Vindication? Sadness? Relief that the walls that held my memories would soon vanish. I stopped by the community bulletin board on Maple Avenue, thumbed past flyers for piano lessons, and lost cats until I found a small note scrawled in my mother's handwriting. "Marina, please, come home. We miss you." No signature, no apology, just an invitation tangled in pride. My chest tightened at the sight of it. I tucked the note into my journal and walked on, each step solid beneath my feet. The world felt vast again, possibilities stretching beyond the reach of their regrets. Still, a question pulsed beneath my skin. Would they ever find the courage to admit their wrongs, or would they remain trapped behind walls built of stubborn pride? I reached my front door, turned the key, and paused. The echo of their grief, their shame, whispered after me. But this time it felt distant, powerless. I sighed, unlocking the door to my own life, and as I crossed the threshold, I realized I no longer needed their apologies to feel whole. The morning sun felt like a benediction as I stepped into my new living room, light scattering across the hardwood like shattered promises, finally set free. I sank onto the couch, unpacked my essentials, and let the quiet settle around me. No echoes of argument or betrayal, just the soft hum of the city beyond my window. Here, in this modest apartment in Portland, Oregon, the air tasted of possibility. Night. The wall opposite me, I hung a travel snapshot from Lisbon, cobalt rooftops against a golden sky, and a Polaroid of Emma and me laughing on a foggy San Francisco pier. I lifted my new painting easel into place, ran my fingers over the unblemished canvas, and felt that old spark stir in my chest. Years ago, I'd shelved my art for ledgers and loan forms. Now, I traced a finger over the blank surface and whispered, "Welcome back." My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "I'm so proud of you." I stared at the words until a single tear slipped down my cheek, one born of relief, not sorrow. I tapped back. "Thank you. Couldn't have done it without you." Then I scrolled through my gallery of dreams. The self-care retreat business card I'd designed on a midnight whim, the plane ticket to Lisbon waiting in my inbox, itineraries sketched in colored pens. By midday, I sat at my small desk, drafting the homepage for my retreat website. Each word felt true. Own your story, love your journey, rediscover yourself. It wasn't a promise to anyone but me. Outside, a neighbor knocked on my door, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen welcoming me with a basket of homemade pastries and a conspiratorial wink. "Welcome to the building," she said. "We're a family here too." I smiled, offering a pastry in return. "Thank you," I said, warmth blooming in my chest. I think I'm finally ready. That evening, I drafted a message to my parents. "I wish you well." My fingers hovered over the send button, a familiar urge to seek closure flickering inside me. But I stopped. I deleted the draft, choosing peace over confrontation. My reflection in the darkened screen felt softer, stronger. I locked my phone and stepped onto the balcony where the city lights twinkled like distant stars. Below, traffic hummed. A barista across the street closed shop for the night. In the distance, cranes moved against the twilight, building new horizons. Just as I was building mine. I inhaled the cool air, thoughts drifting to the future I once postponed. Solo travels, painting exhibitions, retreats where strangers would come to heal and remember themselves. I closed my eyes and felt gratitude. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd reclaimed. No longer invisible, no longer defined by others' needs. My life was mine to shape. One sunrise at a time, with a steady breath, I reached for my phone and opened the airline app. Lisbon awaited. I tapped book flight, watching the numbers climb as dreams turned into plans. A soft smile curved my lips. Here's to uncharted skies and a future I own, one bright horizon at a time.